Let's go.
Take it easy, Yesh.
I
Okay.
want to get out of here. Like I think you do. Darlene.
You're on the air.
Okay. So where are we now?
In Yavamas.
Ayin Dawud Amad Aleph.
8 lines down.
Ayin Dawud Amad Aleph at the
Huh?
top.
I got I have base.
No, we're on Ayin Dawud.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Ayin Dawud.
Yeah. Shema.
Okay.
Second line.
So I'll read the learning sponsors now so we can start. You're learning sponsored by Shuna Arnie Gerlich in memory of Malka Perlman and Philip Mann and Yosef David, Yisrael David Arav Tzvi Hersh, Beryl Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Yosef Meir Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Henya Rivka Bas Pearl Rasner Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Harav Tzvi Hersh, Ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sora Ben Ephraim, Yisrael David Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Ephraim Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Adya Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Miriam Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Pesach Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Shalom Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Shalom Yaakov Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh, Shmuel Ben Arav Tzvi Hersh. The children, grandchildren, great children of Toby Paris, Sora Tova, Bas Yisrael Dov, in her memory. Shari Galbutzin and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachomata Bas Usher. Friends of Nina Moinester, Nechama Asa, Ben Yitzhak Aaron. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Nezechon Nishmat Simcha, Melech Ben Meir Levan Levi. Friends of Mordechai Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece Leah Brocha. A month of learning sponsored by Lydia and Abe Krause. Many friends in honor of their 50th anniversary. David and Middle Chessa in memory of her father, Moshe Ben Reuven Mordechai, Sarah, Susan and Reuven Podolsky in memory of her father, Simcha Banim Ben Yeshua, and in memory of her mother, Chaya Bat Abram Dov, Haran and Mel Haller in memory of her father, Yosef Shivan Tzvi Hersh, Beatrice Pizer in memory of her father, Yisachar Dov Ben Shmuel, Stanley Presser in memory of his wife, Chaya Leah Ben Zeb HaKohen, and a week of learning by Judith and Michael Peretzi in memory of her mother, Razel Bat Yehuda Leib.
Today's the 20th.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're on the top of Ayin Dalet Amid Aleph. And the Gemara has been talking about whether an oral can eat Meiser Sheni. And the Gemara starts out in the second line, Tashma, come in here. I want to bring you a proof. If they did a bris milah and there were pieces of skin that were still covering the corona, and they would be ma'akev the milah, so harezeh enu oichel lo betruma v'lo bepesach. This person is still considered an oral because he has these sitzin, or that's ma'akev the milah. He cannot eat truma. He cannot eat the korban pesach v'lo b'meiser, and he cannot eat meiser. So the Gemara says, "My love, what does meiser mean?" So the first thought would be meiser means meiser sheni, meiser dogged, meiser from grain. The Gemara says no. So this brisa would be a proof that an oral cannot eat meiser sheni. The Gemara says no, this is not a proof. The meiser the brisa is talking about is meiser behema. Every year a person has to take from his newborn animals and take every 10th animal and bring them to Yerushalayim and bring them on the Mizbeach and eat them in Yerushalayim. So Meiser Behema, it's talking about Meiser Behema, and an oral cannot eat Meiser Behema. So the Gemara says Meiser Behema. So the price already says Hainu Kachim. This is the price already says Kachim. Why do you need why do you say this Meiser Behema? So the Gemara says the Taimech, according to your reasoning, Milo Tanan Pesach, does not the Brisa say you can't, an Oro cannot eat from the Korban Pesach, and then it says after that he cannot eat from Kadashim. So why does this have to say the Korban Pesach and Kadashim? Pesach is part of Kadashim. So therefore, since it says Pesach and it says Kadashim, therefore it has to tell you Meiser Behema. So the Gemara says Bishlema Pesach Kadashim Tzricha. I need the Bryce to tell you Pesach Ukadashim. The Itana Pesach is if the Bryce would have only said that an Oro cannot eat from Pesach. So Mishum Darei was Pesach Shiva. Because the Torah clearly tells you by the Korban Pesach, Kol ben Necher lo yochaba. Anybody who is not circumcised cannot eat from the Korban Pesach. Avokadashim, but by other offerings, Amalo, I would say no. The Torah didn't tell you that an Oro cannot eat Kadashim, so I would have said not. Eat on a Kadashim, and if the Brisa would have only said Kadashim and Oro can't eat, I would have said that what does it mean, Kadashim? Have a minu my Kadashim. I would have said it means the Pesach, the Korban Pesach. So therefore, Ella Meiser Behema. So therefore, the Meiser that's talking about in the Brisa could be Meiser. So Meiser Behema Lomadi. Why do I need to say Meiser Behema? So the Gemara says, okay, so maybe it's not Meiser Behema. So, but then if it's not Meiser Behema, then it's Meiser Sheni. And that's the proof that Meiser Sheni and Oro cannot eat Meiser Sheni.
Does Meiser Behema have to go to the Kohen?
The Korban Pesach?
No, not the Korban Pesach. Meiser Behema was eaten by the Baal, by the owner?
By the owners. By the owners. But
what is the Kohen just gets matanas, not
right.
The
I mean, right. No, the animal's eaten by the owner.
by the Baal. Okay.
By the Baal. Allah, so when the Brisa says Meiser, it means Meiser Rishon and Ramerhu. So Meiser Rishon goes to the Levium. And Ramerhu the Amar Meiser Rishon also the Zorim. Meiser Rishon cannot be eaten by anybody other than a Levi. And since it cannot be eaten by anybody Levi, it cannot be eaten by anyone who was an Oro. That's how Ramer learns it. So the Gemara says, come, Toshma, come in here. I'll bring you another proof. That non Rabbi Chia bar Rabbi Divtoi, Rabbi Chia said, Ben Rab from Divtoi said, Oro also bestay Maisrais. And Oro is also in two tithes. So my lab, what does it mean two tithes? What kind of tithes? So I would have said, Echad Meiser Daga, the Echad Meiser Behema. It means the tithes given from grain, which is Meiser Sheni, the Echad Meiser Behema, the tithes given from the animal. The Gemara says no. Hacha Nami Meiser Rishon. This price could be going, is talking about Meiser Rishon, Ramer. And Ramer, he that holds that even by Meiser Rishon, anybody other than a Levi cannot eat Meiser Rishon, and also an Oro cannot. So the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here. I'm going to bring you a proof. A Brisa from another Brisa. The Brisa says, Onain Aser Ramaisa. And Onain, somebody who a relative died, and it's in that day that the relative died before the Kvura, is an Onain. And an Onain cannot eat Meiser. And the Torah clearly tells you that how to men be Onain by Meiser Sheni. Mutter, but an Onain can eat if it's a Kohen Petruma, Ubapora. and a Kohen who is an Onain could do the services regarding the red heifer, the Paraduma. Tvu Yom, somebody who was Tomei and he went to the mikveh, and he went to the mikveh, but he didn't have a shemesh yet. Nightfall didn't occur. So a Tvu Yom is mutter b'pora and the miser. And the third category is a mechusar kapara, somebody who went to the mikveh and a nightfall passed, but the next morning he has to bring the karbonos, is aser b'para, would not be allowed to do any work with respect to the paraduma, the red heifer, umutter b'truma, but this person would be allowed to be eat truma and would allow to be eat miser. So now the Gemara explains, what's the proof? What does this have to do with an oral? The Gemara says, Im Isa, if it is so that an oral cannot eat Meiser Sheni, so Nisni, then we should learn another category, that an oral is Aser B'Truma, umutter, but umutter b'para b'meiser. So if an oral could eat meisers, then the Brisa should have said that an oral is also b'truma and mutter b'para u'meiser. Since the Brisa did not say that, we could take this as a proof that an oral is also to eat meiser shein. So the Gemara says, Hatani devei Rebbe Kiva. High Tana, that author, that Brisa, is the Bay Rebbe Kiva. He is a student of Rebbe Kiva's academy. The Marbi Leila Oro Katume, that Rebbe Kiva in his academy says that an Oro has a din like a Tame person. And a Tame person cannot have anything to do with the Paraduma. Not because he's an oral, but because he's considered Tomei. The Sanya we learned in the Brisa, Rav Akiva says, Ish, the pasuk says Ish, Larabos is oral. So why does it say Ish twice? So one a man, and one a man that has been circumcised. A man has not been circumcised, is not considered a man. So, and there, that's talking about eating truma. So the Gemara says, Man Tana the Polygal of Kiva, who is the Tana who argues with Rav Kiva? So Tana the Rav Yosef Babli, he was a Tana of Rav Yosef the Babylonian. The Sanya we learned in the Brisa, Sreifas Onain, if an Onain burned the Paraduma, Umechusar Kaporim, or somebody who was Mechusar Kaporim, he had not brought his karbonos on that day, is Kshera, he would be kosher to burn the Paraduma. Rabbi Yossi Abavli Omer, and Rabbi Yossi Abavli Omer, Onain Kshera, and Onain is kosher for the burning the Paraduma, but Chusar Kaporim, but a Mechusar Kaporim is Pesulam. So the Gemara now goes on and brings another proof with whether an oro can eat Meiser Shein. The after Rav Yitzchak Savar, and also Rav Yitzchak holds, oro aser b'maisa, and oro cannot eat Meiser Shein. The Omer of Yitzchak, Rav Yitzchak said, Menayin, how do we know la oro aser b'maisa? How do we know that an oro is aser b'maisa sheni? Because it says nemar mimenu. It says from it in the pasuk talking about Meiser Sheni. And it says the word mimenu from it by the Korban Pesach. So the Gemara says we learn a Gzera Shava. And the Gzera Shava teaches us ma mimenu, just like it says menu by the Korban Pesach. And we know by the Korban Pesach, oro aser bo, that an oro is aser by the Korban Pesach. So af mimenu. So when it says mimenu, ha'omer remaisa, it comes to tell us oro aser by. So the Gemara says, wait a minute. Mufni, is this Gzera Shava free? In order to darshan Gzera Shava, the words used in the Gzera Shava have to be free. They're not used for any other drushes. The elo mufne, because if it's not free, then you can ask a question. What's the question? The Gemara says you could ask. Ma le Pesach, how can you learn Pesach? How can you learn Meiser Sheni from Pesach? Ma le Pesach, shechein chayav lehel mishum pigul v'noiser v'tomei. You're chayav on it because of pigul of noiser v'tomei, and whereas Meiser Sheni, you're not chayav on it. So therefore, you cannot learn such as a Gzera Shava because Pesach is more chomer than Meiser Sheni. So the more answers, you're right. Lie, you're right. Afnuye mufne. The two words mimenu are free. Now the Gemara goes on and says, okay, my mufne, which word is free? You have the word mimenu by Pesach, and you have the word mimenu by Meiser Sheni. Which word is free to darshan? Amar Rava, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Rava said in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, it says this word mimenu 3 times by the Korban Pesach. So the Gemara says, what do we learn from these 3 mimenus? Chad legufe, one is for itself. We need it for the Korban Pesach. The chad, the Gzera Shava, and one is extra. So that one that's extra you use for the Gzera Shava. The chad and one to teach us leman da Omer ba hakasav litein lecha ase acher los ase, to give you a positive commandment after a negative commandment. The Torah says lo sasiru imenu ad boker. You should not leave over from it until the morning. And then it says the noser imenu ad boker be'esh tisrafu. So the mimenu, in other words, it comes to tell you that there's a negative commandment you can't leave it over, but there's also a positive commandment that if you do leave it over, you should burn it. Okay? Huh? Say it again.
Is there any annul from ashes on Ursa?
That's an argument in the Gemara, because whether you've done what you've done, the mitzvah is no longer also about no.
Right.
That's.
Yeah, but I can technically. Okay, so I can't know.
It's davening every morning. What you do with the ashes? The Kohen goes up there and takes them all.
Right.
No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about if you're
no,
Korban, do you have to?
No,
I mean, the Gemara is talking here about no, sir. Right. Okay. So the Gemara says, I did accept no sar ksiv nami mimenu. It says also mimenu. Ulamand amar liten lo boker sheni nesreif osoi, that it gives you the second morning. In other words, you don't burn it. You eat the Korban Pesach on the night of the 14th. You leave over. Do you burn it on Yontiv in the morning? Yontiv is the 15th next morning. So the Gemara says that the mimenu comes to tell you don't burn it on Yontiv, you burn it on the first day of choa moed, which means to give a second morning. Okay, litem boker sheni this treif also. I did the kosev ad boiker kosev nami so mimenu. So therefore, the Torah had to tell you mimenu. All right. So now the Gemara says klosa mimenu ksivi meiser. It says the word mimenu 3 times by Meiser Sheni. So the Gemara darshans chad legufe. One you need to tell you by Meiser Sheni, and chad the Ravavu Amr of Yochanan, and one to tell you a drasha of a Ravu in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the chad ledore Lakish, and one for a drasha of Reish Lakish. The Amr Reish Lakish, Amr of Samya, Rav Lakish said in Rav Samya, Menai in the Meiser Sheni Shenitma. How do we know that Meiser Sheni that became Tumah, that Mutter Lesocho? You are allowed to take the Meiser Sheni. Let's say you have olive oil, that's Meiser Sheni. It's Tumah. So you can't eat it. Can you smear it on your skin? That's the worst question. Menayin lemeiser sheni shenitma shemuter lesoichai. So it's shenemar? It says v'loy nosanti mimenu lemeis. The Torah says when you say the meter vice, the vidui meiser, you say v'loy nosanti mimenu lemeis. I didn't use it for a lemeis, right? So what does that mean? Lemeis hu the loisati. I didn't use it for a dead person. So ha lachai dumya the meis nasanti. But for a live person, I used it. Similar to how the way you would have used it on a mace. How would I have used the olive oil on a mace? You would have smeared it on the body. So the same way I can't use it for a dead person, I could use it for a live person. And then the Brisa goes and it says, Ezehu dover sheshava b'chaim mesim. What do you have that you could use this oil for that's similar to both, that you could use it for both a dead person and a living person? So I would have sicha. I would say that's anointing.
What kind of sicha you do for that person?
Huh? You would anoint the skin. They would cover the skin in oil.
Really?
Yeah.
We don't do it.
I don't. They could do it.
Doesn't do that.
But we don't.
Huh? I don't think we do. No. So Maskiv Lo Mar Zutra. Rav Zutra asked a kasha. The Ema. So let's say it's not talking about anointing it. Let's say Likach Lo Oren V'Tachrichan. What it means is I didn't take Meiser Sheni and redeem it and use the money that I redeemed from Meiser Sheni, which is also Meiser Sheni money now, and buy Tachrichan for a mace. That's what it means. Not that I'm talking about using the Meiser Sheni itself, but I'm talking about using the money and buying Tachrichan. So the Gemara says, Amr Rav Huna B'rei Rav Yeshua, Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yeshua said, Mimenu migufai. The pasuk says Mimenu, from it, migufo, from it, from the olive oil. You did not use it for the mace. Not that you sold it and bought something, but you didn't use the Meiser Sheni for a mace. That's the more darshans the pasuk. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says, Lo nasanti, we darshan lo nasanti dumya de lo achalti. Similar to I did not give it and I did not eat it. So the more said similar. What does it mean? Lo achalti ma lahalan megufo just like over there, it means migufo, that I didn't not eat from the Meiser Sheni, afkan migufo. So when it means I didn't use it for a mace, it means I didn't use it for the Meiser Sheni itself for the mace. Vakati mufta mitzad echad. So we just said that by Meiser Sheni you have 3 mimanos and they're all used, and by Pesach you have 3 and 1 is free and 2 of them are used. So vakati mufna mitzad echad. So this is a gzera shava that has one side available, one side free for the drush and the other one not. So my kati mufta mitzad echad. So the Gemara says, if you have a gzera shava, that one side is free for the drasha and one side is not, that mandarma says you can make the gzera shava, and if you have a question, the ain mashivan, and you can't answer, you can't ask any questions on that gzera shava as a good valid gzera shava. All you need is one side of the gzera shava to be available, and lameid and vein mashiva. But what about the other mandomer? Lamandomer, the amr lameid and umeshivan. You learn the gzera shava, but since it's not mufta from both sides, if you have a question, you can ask a question. So here, ma'ikalamema, this is a gzera shava that's only available from one side, and you can ask your kasha. So the Gemara says, Hach de Ravavu, Rav Nachman, Amr Ravavu, Nafkale. This can be derived from Rav Nachman, name of Rabba Baravu, the Amr of Nachman Rabba Baravu, my Dixiv. What does the Torah tell us? Vani hine nasanti lecha es mishmeres trumasi. I am giving to you to watch my truma. All right. God says, I am giving to you, to Aaron and the Kohanim, to watch my truma. And trumasi is plural. My trumos. So what kind of 2 trumas is God saying she should watch? V'shtei trumas akasa b'davar. 2 different types of truma. What are the 2 trumas? Achas truma tahora. One is truma that is tahor. The achas truma tameya, and one that is truma tameya. And God is telling Aaron, watch the truma tameya. The Omar Rachmana, and the Torah says lecha, that I am giving to you both trumas. So the truma tameya can be used by you. So if you want to burn the Kohen wants you to burn the oil that's tameh to get heat from it, to get a fire, he's allowed to, because it's for you. Okay. So now the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, and all those that are tameh, kol hatmeim, cannot eat truma. So the Gemara says, Mana hani miwi. Where do we know this from? That anybody who's tameh cannot eat truma. So Rav Yochanan Mishum Rav Shmuel. Rav Yochanan said, name Rav Shmuel, the Amar Krok. The pasuk says, Ish mizera Aaron v'hu tzarua oizav min hakarshim lo yocha. So the pasuk says clearly that a man who is from Aaron, and he's a tzarua or a zav, cannot eat from truma. Ezehu davar. What is ezehu davar sheshava? What food is equal to all of our own children? Havi Omer zat truma. What does that mean? Can a kohenes eat from the kachim? No. Only the kohen. Only Only the male can eat from the Kodeshim. Right. So in other words, what thing the Torah says can all Kohanim eat from? That's Truma. Whether they're a male, whether they're a female, or the wife of a Kohen, they can eat from Truma. The Ema, the Chazeh B'Shok. So let's say that one of the Matnas Kahuna that's given to Aaron and his children is the Chazeh B'Shok, and that could be eaten by Aaron and the wives of the Kohanim and the children. So let's say that's Kochim Kalim. Right. Right. So the Gemara says, so Ema Chazeh B'Shok. So the Gemara says, Einu B'Chazeres. That Einu Chazeres. In other words, if this woman was married to a Kohen, and while she was married to the Kohen, she ate, when the Kohen brought home the Chazeh B'Shok from a korban, she ate from it. All right? She dies. All right? And she goes back to her father's house, and she's a Kohenes.
I thought she died.
He died. Her husband was a Kohen. She was married. She's a Kohenes married to a Kohen. All right? While she was married to the Kohen,
No children.
they have no children.
No children. And he died.
He died.
She can go back to the
She go back to the father's house. When she goes back to the father's house, can she eat from Truma?
Yes.
With no children. When she goes back to the father's house, can she eat from the father's Chazeh B'Shok? No. She can only eat from the Chazeh B'Shok of her husband, not from the Chazeh B'Shok from the father.
Never knew.
Truma namis, and where it says Truma, Einu B'Chaloa. So I could say the same thing by Truma. Einu B'Chaloa. That a Kohen or a woman who is a Chalola is not permitted to eat Truma. So the Gemara says Chalola lav zaro d'aranu. That a Chalola is nishta kohen. That the fact that they're a Chalola, that mum takes away the yichus of being called a Kohen. Okay?
You're telling me if this Kohen marries a Gerusha, he could still eat Truma?
No, not as long as he's married.
She becomes.
He
can't.
I'm not talking about
She becomes a Chalola, not him.
Yeah, so, but therefore,
He
once he
can't marry
became
her.
in a roundabout way, Truma exactly, which he can't do the avoider anymore.
Yeah, he can.
Yes, he can.
So therefore, he still can eat Truma.
Not as long as he's married.
Lo yikachu.
You understand my question?
I understand your question. I think, Sid,
I'm sorry?
that the answer is, but again, don't take me on my,
I don't think so.
that she, when he marries her, she becomes a Chalola, but he does not.
The children become halal.
Right, but not the Kohen. The Kohen can continue.
You're saying he can do it, continue doing the
Uh-huh.
I don't think
As
so.
long as he's
It
married
says
to
Isha
her,
b'chalal and zodo lo yikachu.
Once,
but once he dies, then
Stay
he goes
with
back.
Irish, you can marry.
We had that previously.
yes, we did. You're right. No, he would become a Chalal as well. And he could not do the avoid or anything else.
I can't do anything.
Right. Okay. So now the Gemara goes on to a different topic. And so now the Gemara is talking about going back a little to the Gemara said before that a Tomei may not eat Truma. So the Gemara says, "Mimai dahai ad asher yitor." The pasuk says that anybody who's tahar, that cannot eat truma until Asher Yitor. It becomes cleansed. So who says that means Ad Erev Shemesh? Maybe who says it means until there's nightfall? Maybe it just means becomes cleansed. Goes to the mikveh during the day. Why can't he eat truma? Right? So the pasuk says, Ad the Ika Erev Shemesh, until there's Erev Shemesh. So Ema Ad the Maisi Kapora. Let's say that means until he brings the his offering. The Gemara says, Lo sakodaita. You should not think so. That Tana the Bay, Rabbi Shmuel, and the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel's academy learn Bezav Baal Shtei Rios, a Zav who saw two Rios, who's not a Zav who saw three Rios is a Zav Gadola, has to bring a korban, but a Zav who sees only two, Uva Mitzora Muskor, and a Mitzora who was locked up. A person went to the Kohen, and the Kohen saw this Mitzora on him, and he said, you're locked up for 7 days. All right. And after the 7 days, what happens? He sees the Kohen again, and the Kohen says, you're okay. Okay? You don't have to be locked up. You're okay. It's not Mitzora. Does he bring the Korbanos? No. Only a Kohen, only a Mitzora who is locked up for 2 weeks and becomes a Muchlat, a Mitzora Vadai, brings the Korbanos. But if he was locked up for 1 week, and then the Kohen said, this is not Mitzora, he does not bring the Korbanos,
Purification.
the purification Korbanos after. So Mor says, Tumya the Tamei Nefesh. Can we learn this from the pasuk that says, talking about Tamei Nefesh? Somebody who becomes Tamei Nefesh, contaminated to a mace. Ma Tamei Nefesh, the La Bakaparahu. When somebody becomes Tamei Nefesh, so what does he have to do? Become tar. He has to be spritched by with the ashes of the paraduma. Does he have to bring a korban afterwards? After he's sprayed with the water of the paraduma on the 3rd day and the 7th day. Does he have to bring a kapora, another korban? No. You're correct, Marty. So my tamim nefesh the la bar kapora, who he's not subject to bringing. He does not have to bring a korban after he becomes Torah. So hainu nami, these two, when it says he becomes Tahar, la b'nei kaporan, they don't have to bring, are not subject to bring any Torah. So therefore that means that they do not have to bring any additional korbanos after they become Torah. The Amo, the Gemara says, let's say, what does it mean that the Zav or the Mitzora does not have to bring any more Kapora? Avo, the Bar Kapora, but a Zav who has seen 3 times and who is a Zav that has to bring Kapora is subject to Kapor and has to bring the Kapor and is not Torah or Ad the Maisi Kapora until that he brings the actual korban, even though he went to the mikveh and he waited for a night. The Su, and furthermore, Hadith, now we learn in a Mishnah, Tovo, if a person went to the mikveh, the Allah, and he came out of the mikveh, oichel b'maiser. We're talking about a person who was a Mitzora, who was a confirmed Mitzora, and has to bring karbonos on the next morning. So this person went to the mikveh, right, the day before, and the Brisa says, the Mishnah says, Tovo v'ola, when he comes out of the mikveh, oichel b'maiser. He can now eat meiser. Okay. Harev shemesh, and when it comes nightfall, ochel b'truma. He can eat truma. And the next morning he brings the karbonos, the heavy kapara v'oichel b'kachim. And after he brings the kapara, the karbonos the next day, he can eat the kadashim. So Moore says, Menalon, how do we know this then? This is the halacha that, but how do we know this? So the Moore says, Amar Rava, Amar of Chista. Rava said in the name of Chista, Ksiv lo yoichal trust klosa kroik siva. It says 3 times. It says one pasuk mid a kashim, mid a kadashim. He should not eat from the kadashim ki'im rochatz besaru v'mayim. He went to the mikveh. He washed his skin in water. And then there's another pasuk that says, so ha rochatz. So this pasuk says ha rochatz. If he washed, he's tahor, right? And then there's another pasuk. The pasuk says v'ksiv uba hashemesh v'toher. If the sun, when the sun sets, then he is v'tohar v'achar oichel. So min a kadashim. Then he can eat from the kosher. So you have two different psukim, both contradict each other, right? And then there's a third pasuk. The third pasuk says v'chiper aleh hakohen, after the kohen does the atonement for him with the karbonos, then v'tahera. He's taller. So these 3 psukim contradict each other. These 3 psukim say once he's tar after the mikveh, and one says he's tar after nightfall, and one says he's tar after the karbonos. So how can this be? How can this be? So Khan, the first pasuk is talking about the meiser sheni. After he goes to the mikveh, he can eat meiser sheni. Khan the truma, the second pasuk of Harev Shemesh, nightfall, is talking about truma, and Khan the kadashim. The third pasuk of bringing the kohen brings the karbonos is talking about after he brings the offering, and then he can eat kadashim. The epachana. So the Gemara says, wait a minute. Let's reverse it. Let's say that the first one, going to the mikveh, allows you to eat truma. And the second one, they have to wait a night, is talking about meiser sheni. So the Gemara says, mistavra truma adifa. I would say that's more logical that truma is more, has more sanctity, shechein memche pei zayin. And that means that I forgot it, but okay. But these are the 4 stringencies by truma that are not by meiser sheni. So the Gemara says, "Va'adraba meiser difa," but I would say meiser sheni is more stringent. Shechein hadad hey dalid samach tes base. And all right, so the Gemara says afilu hachi, even if you want to say that they both have the same number of stringencies, or that you want to say that meiser sheni has more, truma has 4 and this has 5. But the Gemara says one of the stringencies of Meiser of Truma is Misa. The first mem of mem ches pei dao Zion is Misa. And Misa is a greater stringency than anything else. So therefore, Truma is more stringent than Meiser Sheni. So the Gemara says, Rava says that below Misa Difa, even without the fact that Truma has a death penalty, Midei Shemayim, it's still greater than Truma. Nami lo motzis amrit. You could not say that the first verse refers to Truma and the second verse applies to Meiser. Why? Because the verse says nefesh. The verse says nefesh should not become contaminated. Ezehu davar sheshava b'chol nefesh. What is something that everybody, chol nefesh, every person could eat? Can every person eat truma? No. Only a Kohen can eat truma. So the first pasuk that says nefesh is talking about meiser, that everybody could eat meiser sheni if they're in Yerushalayim, and therefore that first pasuk is talking about meiser sheni. The kati haini miwi the la bar kapora, but I might say that the second pasuk, which talks about truma, doesn't have to bring an additional atonement. Avohecha the bar kapora, but where he is subject to bringing an additional atonement, adam maisi kapora. So the Gemara says, what's in Gemara's kasha? Like the case was talking about a Metzora. A Metzora was muchut. He went through the process. On the day before he brought the karbonos on the seventh day, he went to the mikveh. And now, the eighth night after he went to the mikveh, he should be able to eat truma. But maybe because he's a Metzora and he didn't bring the karbonos, maybe the fact that he didn't bring the karbonos would say that he cannot eat truma. That's the Morris kasha. Abohecha the bar kapara, where this person is supposed, this person who wants to eat truma has to bring karbonos, I would say ad the maisi kapara, that he could not eat truma at night. He has to wait until after the karbonos. So Amar Abaya, Trey Kroik Sivi Bioletis. It says two different verses by a woman who gives birth. Kasiv ad Malosh Yemei Tahara, until the completion of her days of Tahara. Kivin, so the what does the verse imply? Kivin Shemalu Yomel, once she completes her days, Tahara, she's tahar. She waits the 40 days or the 80 days. She's tahar. But there's another pasuk. The second pasuk says, "V'chiper aleh hakoyim v'tahera." The pasuk says that after the 40 days or the 80 days, she has to bring the korban, and after she brings the korban, she becomes tahar. So the Gemara says, "Okay, then how can this be?" So the Gemara says, "Kan the truma." One verse, the first verse is talking about truma. That after the time period, she can eat truma, and kan the kadashim, and in order to eat kachim, she has to bring the kapora. The Gemara says, "V'epechana." Let's reverse it. and say that the first one talks about Kadashim, that you can eat it after nightfall, and Truma, you have to wait until the Karbonis. Mistavra Kodesh Chomer. So the Gemara says it's logical that Kachim is more Chomer than Truma. Shechein Pei Nun Kuf Ayin Chof Samach. We had this mnemonic before. So the Gemara says, Adrabah, I might say no, that Truma is Chamura, because Truma also has Mem Che Pei Zayin. And one of the is okay. So the Gemara says Hanach Nefishin, like Mordechai would say, we're going back to the numbers game. That Kachim has more chumras than Truma. Hanach Nefishin. Okay. So the Gemara says, Rava says, below Hanach Nefishin, even if you don't want to go to the number game, I could tell you that Kachim is more Chomer than Truma. Lo Motzes Amrit, you cannot say that because the pasuk says Amr Kra v'chiper oleha a kohen v'tohara. The pasuk says that the kohen brings the atonement offers, and then she becomes tahor. Mechlal, so we see that until he brings the atonements, she's tameh, because it says the tahera. She is purified when he brings the atonement offerings, right? The Esau Gedaitach. Now, if you would want to think that Ikre Khan v'habasar sheyiga b'chol tameh lo ye'achol, the verse says that anybody who meets meat from a korban that touches anything that's contaminated cannot be eaten. So we hear from here that verse, when it says Kadashim, doesn't mean Kadashim, it means from Truma. Okay. So Maskival Rav Shisha Berei Ravidi, Rav Shisha the son of Ravidi says, Mi Matzis Amr Truma Ksiva Hacha. Can you say that Truma is really written here? The Sanya, we learned the pasuk says, Daber el b'nei Yisroel, talk to the b'nei Yisroel regarding the women, Isha Kiyol the Zachar, right? That's what the pasuk says. Ein the Ela bar Yisroel. I might think it's only talking about the b'nei Yisroel, and a normal Israel woman. Giores v'shivcha mechareres, a woman who was a ger. She became a ger, and she gives birth to a child. Does she have to? Is she subject to all these laws? She's not daber al b'nei Yisrael. She's not. I mean, she is a b'nei Yisrael, but she's not. Right. So the giores v'shivcha mechareres. Talmud Lomer Isha. But if you want to say it's talking about Betruma, Giores v'shivcha benos meichal trumana, could a Giores or a shivcha that became free and becomes a Jewish woman and chayiv in all mitzvahs, benos meichal trumana, no, they can't eat truma anyway. So the Gemara says, Amar Rava. All right, so we'll stop here and we'll let him pick up from the bottom.
Thank you.
You're walking home?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't forget your phone, pal.
What?
Have a good Shabbos.
My park nearby? Yeah. What do you mean park nearby? Wherever you park is nearby. You mean, am I closer to the door? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's meant nearby.
I think I am.